Hello, my friends. What's happening? What's good with you? Let's see if John gets on here shortly. What's up, Alex? What's up, friends? Grabbing John. What's up, Edu? How are you? Hey, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah?
Yeah. How you doing?
Good. I was up super early this morning to take care of some stuff. I was up at like 7, which is way too early for me. So
Same.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess people that normally have to do that, I respect them more every time I get up that early in the morning.
I was supposed to go play tennis with my manager, and I woke up at 7:15, and then he texted me at 7:45, right when I was about to leave, that he forgot he had a Zoom call at the time we were going to play. And I was like, dude, come on, be less managerial.
Well, one of the things I love about these streams that we've been doing is that, we both said it on some of the streams and then privately as well. We both really prioritize this thing. It's become a very consistent thing in our lives and some other people's lives. And I think it's a really nice thing that we make the time to do this and stick to it.
Well, he said, let's play later. And I was like, I got Live with Matt Rad.
I got the live stream.
And I need a good hour before we go on to like chill out for a second, like read a book or just do something. I just need some time before being public facing.
Yeah, I saw you had a post that you had some tea, you had a book, you had some other things.
It looks like tea, but it was a really nice coffee.
Brewed
tea-like. It was a geisha coffee from April Coffee Roasters, my favorite roastery in Copenhagen.
Shout out Copenhagen.
April coffee.
April
good.
Coffee. Nice. Well, this is I think we've started 2021 off with quite a bit of enthusiasm. We are now officially at the point where there are way too many questions being asked that we can get to. There's a lot of gear questions. So those of you that are just sort of, maybe you just said what I was about to say.
I just sold 2 pieces of gear. Compressors.
Both those of you that are just kind of starting to watch these things and watch the playbacks and listen on Spotify, which I guess Spotify is the way that most people are doing podcasts. Spotify,
really?
Apple, YouTube. Apple? People that are checking this stuff out. A lot of the reason we're doing this is to not have the gear discussions. For those of you that haven't tuned in before, it's really trying to talk about higher level, but that doesn't mean it's better. Just different kinds of conversations about what it's really like to be a record maker and asking questions of why we use the tools that we use. So we tend to not talk a ton about gear until we get to the end of the episode and we tire John out, and then he's down to talk about gear. So it's only
patterns, man.
Yeah,
patterns.
Yeah. So just for those of you that are tuning in, it's more of a discussion, really a discussion between friends and talking about making records. But we did get a lot of great questions, and I will hit people back in DMs about specific gear stuff and trying to make more clips, because we do talk about gear periodically within the discussions, of course. And then over on the Live with Matt Rad Instagram, we have more clips and things like that where it's specific, like, hey, we're talking about compression, we're talking about reverbs, we're talking about kick drums, that sort of stuff.
Let's just quickly lean into Kid Cutler's comment of, I love compression now sells compressors. I'm gonna lean into it a bit more in the box. I'm not committing to it, so I can check myself later on and not have to recall the gear. So big facts there. You caught me, bro.
Yeah. Well, if you're someone who really doesn't compress much and now you're compressing a little, you probably don't need a whole bunch of compressors all the time.
Yeah, so I speak highly of the built-in dynamics to Ozone 9. I think it's really transparent, and it does a nice amount of leveling transparently before you start hearing it. So I use that mostly. I just got a new Clipper plugin. Well, very old, but new to me now. It was one of my first plugins I ever had. I'm kind of leaning into
which one is that? Name it.
The T-Rex Classic Clipper.
By the way, it's hilarious that we were like, well, we don't really talk about gear, but there's a bunch of compression and Clipper questions.
Really?
Yeah, so fuck it. There we go.
Let me just talk openly about a big move that I made for myself last week that if Mike Miller is on here, he hasn't even heard it yet, so he's going to freak out when I tell him I took the VT7 Fern off my mix bus, and I added a clipper to the end of the chain instead. So I now have
hardware clipper.
No. In T-Rex plug-in clipper.
Okay.
The VT7 is now on a vocal, like on a hardware insert that I can use on anything, but it sounds amazing on vocals right now. But I took one level of tubes and transformers off. I think the amount of tubes in the VT5, the EQ, is enough for that musicality and tubes.
Which is on your mix bus. Yeah.
Which is still there, doing pretty heavy-handed bottom and top EQ. But I after talking to a couple of homies, realized that potentially 2 sets of tube gear and transformers were boxing me into only that kind of overly musical tube love, kind of, rounded off, potentially softened a bit, and I want to have more flexibility. I could put the VT7 on as a hardware insert if I need that extra love on that kind of music. Yeah. But that and maybe 80% still wants that. But I've gotten good luck on the first couple of mixes this year without it, and having a clipper at the end, very minimally. So when I say clip, I don't mean like I'm overdriving it on the last stage of the mix.
It's not like a Fruity Loops trap drum clip.
It's not. Let that be done elsewhere. Bring it to me, and I'll elevate it. You can use this in that fashion as well, and I have tried it on kick drums and even in parallel, and that's there. This T-Rex is the closest, I think, to the Fruity Loop sound when you hit it hard. It's still not the same. It still softens things a little bit, but it's the right kind of that soft clip that I think people are hearing in music these days. And
I like that JST clipper plugin too.
I use that a lot. This is more transparent.
JST is definitely gives a sonic quality to it.
Yeah, and I like it. I'm still using it on subgroups and/or individual instruments. It as I used it on every mix for a year, I've realized that it's a little heavy-handed on drums specifically. Brings up some bits that I don't like.
Well, this is an interesting. You and I can get into a longer discussion about this. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll just make it short. But the idea of, and again, what we're talking about for new people watching this stuff, all these things are tools. So what you've done is not necessarily change what tools you're using, but just allowed for a more flexible setup.
Exactly.
Because, a lot of what we talk about is trying to keep musicality, trying not to over limit, compress, bright, loudness, that sort of thing.
Not to rely on one thing is what we always kind of get back to.
But have the ability to throw some things into the wall a little bit more than just with your multiple tube staging things. So you took one of them out so you can pop it in when you want. But that's really interesting. I like that.
And on a higher level, being okay with saying that the $7,000 compressor that you bought is not going to be used on everything. Yeah. And that was a story I told myself, because when I put that on, it gave the love that I had been looking for in my mixes, and it was a quick answer to a lot of things. And then I added the VT5 because I wanted a mastering EQ on the chain, and that added more love. But now trying it without the first one, the love I wanted was already instilled in the VT5 in one chain. So process of elimination. I've never actually tried only that on my mix bus. So it came with pure listening, not listening with any expectation. I was down for it to not sound better, but it just did. Yeah. Or more to my taste of, okay, it actually sounds a bit wider now. It sounds a bit more transparent, where the extra layer of tubes was filling in maybe too many gaps when I talk about even order harmonics, and maybe it's filling in just a little bit too much for what people are used to, competitively in the pop sphere. I'm also trying to, balance musicality with competitiveness, like we always, come back to as well. I don't want to be in one box. So no pun intended, but I like the more flexible nature. And also in this conversation of just being open to coming to you and saying, yo, I'm doing this, and let everybody know that this is what's happening. And I want to just say one thing just for the Fern homies. And I think if you don't have both, one is doing a lot of things. So just because I'm taking my VT7 off the mix bus, if you own one and you're on this chat, don't take it off. It does great things musically. Amazing non-monogamous mix bus. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's a good topic and a good lesson for people that someone like you, and I do the same thing, are constantly trying to tweak and refine and challenge our own perceptions and habits. Especially, I do a lot of talking to people in the DMs. I just had a song of mine posted. Now it feels weird to say it. Now it feels like I'm bragging. I
brag away.
I had a song hit 1 billion streams last week.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Which was crazy. And a bunch of people were like, "You worked on this? What did you do?" It was like, "Oh, I wrote it and I produced it and worked with this." And how did it happen? Well, it was like a year-long journey, and this happened, and I wrote it with my two friends, Ilse and Ruth Ann, and then took it to a bunch of like just the process of going through all of it. And so I'm constantly in a state where I'm trying to find new things, new experiences, new people to collaborate with, new writers. Am I going to produce this song? Am I just going to come in and do lyrics on the song? I really enjoy that process of doing a lot of different roles. So it's in my being and my personality and my comfort zone to push myself to try new things all the time. And I think a lot of times people look at maybe somebody like you and go, he's got his setup. What does Jon Castelli use? Well, he uses this and this and this and this. And it's important to realize that 6 months later, you might just be like, oh, I'm doing something totally new. Because even in the space where you've narrowed a lot of things that,
pretty narrow.
You're not doing lots of production, although you are going back to engineering this year. But you've narrowed down to a very intense, specific skill set, but yet you're still constantly trying new things. There's somebody, Hex asked about weaknesses in our game. If we could just talk about that, the concept of always being a student and people that are at a higher level than those starting out. Are you constantly trying to refine? Where do you find weaknesses? How do you think about that stuff? I think it's a great example. Not that you felt like, maybe you speak on it a little bit, but did you feel like you wanted to basically give yourself an opportunity to be better about trying to compete with a certain kind of mix?
Yeah, I want to be. Yes, I actually I actually sent a text message to an artist that kind of triggered this this journey. It was kind of mid-year last year, and I lost a client. I don't know if I lost the client. That's a bit dramatic, but a few songs since his album came out, someone else has mixed, and I mixed, more than half of a 21 song album, right? Like it was we were engaged highly in this process, and it didn't work out after mixing a song for a next EP that was supposed to come out, and like I didn't make it as loud as he wanted. Because it was an acoustic guitar and vocal with a kick drum song, and I was like, it should feel more musical than that and more open. And when I said like it feels like EDM doing electric guitar, acoustic guitar, he's like, well, that's kind of what I want. And my reaction was like, okay, well, if that's what you want, like I don't really know how to do that, and nor do I want to do that. Like EDM approach on an acoustic guitar song, it's like that's not like I don't feel that. I feel like emotion from the dynamics and like what's the lyric, and you're in your bedroom and you're talking about whatever the lyric was. It was just really intimate and really slow, and I lost the gig. Like it just, he went elsewhere for the rest of the EP, didn't use my mix on that, and it was a bummer because he's a friend. And I thought, okay, that was one project this year that didn't work out. Pretty high ratio of success on when someone hired me, like how many songs didn't work out, but that one was fixable if I put my aesthetic aside a little bit. I think we actually could have come up with a compromise if I was able to maximize and get it to be his loudness and his perceived kind of distortion in that style, and mixed with my warm, balanced aesthetic. And I didn't know how to do that, to be honest, and that's a weakness. So talking about weaknesses, if it's not matching my aesthetic, I should still be able to get it somewhere in between, and I wasn't able to. So I've been on this journey on how to do that. And then talking to two homies, like I started out 10 minutes ago talking about, I kind of got down to like, okay, well, what is someone like that used to, looking for? I should at least know how to engineer that, right? I am an engineer. I should know every technique possible. Whether I choose to employ them or not, I should know how to. So I started going down this clip stream, and like I had the JST, I didn't love it. And then I started like hitting limiters harder or with really fast releases and try to clip that way. I thought about getting a Lavery Gold and spending that $20,000 on an, on an ADDA. And I was like, I don't know if that's going to be the answer for what my aesthetic is. And I've yet to actually demo it and know, and I probably will this year at some point. But I think I stumbled upon something that will allow me to get closer to that when needed. And it being a bit of a handicap to be a little bit more versatile. Even though my genre base is wide, I still think it can get even wider. So that's kind of a weakness. It's not even a weakness. It's just a goal to be way cross-platform in music. Yeah. Like I do jazz records and I do trap records and country. And I want to do it all because I love all music and I understand it and listen to it all.
I love these discussions because it always makes me go 3 steps more meta. And it's like, okay, can you do this? Do you want to do this? Yeah. What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do professionally? What inspires you creatively? I think that I'm confident that you could not make any changes. You could have your double tube mix bus. You could cruise for years and years and years, making the amazing sounding mixes that you've done. But you and I are not those type of people. We're the type of people that get excited about, okay, what's the new thing? Why does it sound that way? Why can't I make it sound that way? I can, but I have to compromise this. Is there a better way? Can I do the things that I do? Can I get what I love about what I've been doing and integrate it with, like, that process is a super important part of, I think, most very successful record makers that I know. Not all. There's certain people who go, this is my sound, this is my thing. And I think those people can have a quicker rise. They probably don't sustain as much, whether they're producers or mixers or whatever. But also that might just fit with their personality. They're like, I've figured out my thing and I want to just go gold rush it and get everything that I can. And there's nothing,
and you could probably get 5 years out of that.
Yeah. And by the way, if you can make 10 times as much money, like, great. It's just not my personality. I get excited by trying to figure out how to write better lyrics today. And then next week I get obsessed with bass and I want to make funk records. And then 6 months later, I'm like, man, my mixes, I feel like, that's just what my personality is. So I think it's important for people that are starting out to always be in an exploratory mode to figure out what it is that you like. And if you decide that you then find what you love doing and you just do that, that's great. But also those of us that have been doing it for years and years and years and have some measure of success and chart success and radio success and whatever, we're still looking for it and we're still pushing because it's fun, not because we're feeling desperate or weird about it. I mean, sometimes you're just like, fuck, I can't do that. And that's bothersome. But a big part of it is it's just exciting. Like somebody asked me in the DMs the other day, how do I translate the sound in my head into my computer? There's just like a sort of I think it was kind of a throwaway question. And I answered and I said, 1, you'll never be able to exactly do it or do it all the time. Yeah. 2, that's okay. And 3, enjoy the process of not getting it right because that's how you're going to learn and you'll find new stuff and you'll learn new things about yourself. So it's the process of trying to get better and learning and challenging yourself is, I think, what makes you and I fundamentally good at what we do in whatever capacity that is.
I'm also trying to go to take that all into account. And then also with books that I'm reading and listening to neuroscientists and brilliant people speak on podcasts that inspire me, kind of come along with the term of meet people where they're at, right? So I want to, that strive for new is not because I want to feel or hear something new from music. It's that thousands of songs are being made a day and people are used to a new sound. I should be aware and meet them where they're at. And then to some degree, bring it into my world because that's why they're hiring me. Right. Yeah. So see them, hear their intention, bring it to me, find it in between. Sometimes it's going to have to come closer to my aesthetic for it to work. Sometimes it's going to have to stay closer to theirs. And
sometimes it's not going to work, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. Exactly. Because sometimes you can't meet someone where they're at because it's just not on the same level as you. I don't mean at a higher level, just a different level. They're doing their thing, and you're doing you, and that's okay too. But I think the idea of like I think I went 2 years of going really deep in like, let's bring it to my world and just see how many W's I can get.
Yeah.
And I got a lot more W's than I got L's. So I was like, let's keep going on that. And now I think I can get even more W's, allowing it to land a bit more in the artist's court or the producer's court, because I now know how to inject just the right amount, because I've done the full injection for so long. So that's kind of where I'm at for this year. And I'm not, like we talked about last year, I'm not really New Year's resolution type. It's just, to me, it's not even really a reset point. I think your birthday is a reset point. It's like, that's another year of you. Like, to me, birthday is New Year. I don't celebrate birthdays. I celebrate a new year, and a new chapter in you. I don't want to use 2021 numerically as that. It's a starting off point after 2 weeks of not working to reassess and come at things differently. And I'm going to lean into other people's worlds a little bit more this year.
So much of making music and listening to music and consuming music is maybe the most communal art form. It really exists as an act of dialogue between people, whether it's the creative people making it or the people listening to it or whatever. You can't exist in a vacuum ultimately with music. I mean, there are a few people, maybe, but I actually can't even really think of them, who really work in isolation and then present their things to the world. But even like the Trent Reznors of the world, they still have their collaborators, the people who really go deep in this sort of thing. It's still a dialogue between collaborators, and that process, in addition to all the other things it brings, is about challenging you and making things better and making things that you wouldn't have otherwise made. So I think racking up some W's, doing exactly what you want is a great thing, but now you realize like maybe there's more. Maybe there's more and new, and that's wonderful, man. It makes me really happy to hear.
Kid Cutler, to answer your question, the Zane mix was pre this shift. We did, Dennis Koziak and I co-mixed that, I don't know, end of summer? No, more like October, I guess. I don't exactly know when, but relatively fresh on the mix front, pre-release, but not since this thought came to mind. So that's got the same gear that has been on it the whole time. I like that mix. It's also produced by Scribs, Riley, and he's great. And I did Scribs' this whole album, so I have a familiarity with his sound, and Dennis and I co-mix all the Khalid stuff, so we have a great relationship too. So that's kind of just like a bunch of good ears on a record and having fun, to be honest.
Somebody asked in the chat a minute ago, my song is In the Name of Love, Martin Garrix and BB Rex. That's the song that hit a billion. It's a weird number. It's
an unfathomable number.
That's a crazy. Yeah, wild. I wanted to, before we get into some more questions, I wanted to see if you had thoughts, just rather than talking to you on the phone later, just talking to you now. So some other single topic, some other full hour single topics for the future. See what you think. There's been a lot of questions about loudness, and we talked a little bit about it today. But again, now that you're thinking about that as part of the context for shifting some things, maybe that could be a cool topic in the future, just to talk about concept, like we did with the last ones, the basics of what people talk about with loudness versus density, these sort of things. And then that could be a cool topic. There's also a lot of questions about stereo image, which I don't feel like is an hour's worth of conversation between us, but maybe, I don't know.
In a lot of ways, they go hand in hand too. I mean, I'm more interested in the term perceived loudness than actual loudness, right? Like if you can get a -12 LUFS mix to feel like a -8, you win everywhere. That's not easy to do, but with experimentation and clipping and over EQ, you can do that.
This is an hour topic. We'll do it.
Let's do this. An hour topic.
Let's do this next week. We'll do loudness next week. There were a lot of good questions about it, so I'll hit people back about that.
Cool.
There were a few questions about the business side of things. Ben asked, do you know anyone making content like you guys, but for the business side? We did 2 hours I don't know, 5 or 6 episodes ago, we did 2 full hours about the business and about managers and our journeys and that sort of thing. So I definitely would recommend checking those out. I can't remember which numbers those are. If anybody in the chat knows which number, which episode numbers those are, but we did 2 on the music business that I think were pretty thorough in terms of our perspective. I'm actually talking to a few people about having some other people on, having an attorney on, having a publisher on. We'll have some more of those conversations. But yeah, so we did 2 episodes on the music business. So please check that out.
I love this math. A 3-minute song played 1 billion times in a row is over 6,000 years.
Good Lord.
Whoa. Sorry. Joshua, you got to drop the mic right there. That's a lot of listens.
Oh, Bradley, slow hand sound there. Episode 25 and 26 were the music business chats. Thanks, Bradley. Yeah, nice. Check those out.
Let's keep going.
Let's keep going.
I'm feeling juicy with the response today. Let's go.
All right. Since we just did the let's talk about what we can do to be better and some of the things that we are trying to improve on.
Ooh, a kitchen tour. I like that idea.
Oh yeah, you should definitely do a kitchen tour at some point. Studio tours are fine, but kitchen tour. You got it? Let's see it. Can you? Oh, it does look nice.
We'll just do a kitchen tour.
We'll do a kitchen tour real quick.
I have
for those listening on audio only, there's a nice cabinet.
There's an espresso machine, a bar.
Oh yeah, good bar.
1 wine fridge. I have 2. We'll get to the other one.
Okay, yeah, you got to have 2.
Some copper serving.
That's beautiful.
Given to me by the Conversations community. That was a gift at the end of the last one we had.
For those of you that don't know, John, his Conversations podcast, which is excellent. They just had a Ryan Lewis interview recently. He started out, they would do events at his place.
Love that
hopefully
knife.
Will come back. Got good knives, olive oil.
Got that. Then we have the island where I'm sitting at.
Oh, I forgot to tell you, I still have culinary gifts, Christmas gifts for you. I got to come bring them.
Come bring them?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's that.
That sounds good. There's your kitchen tour, guys. So we were doing the being a student, getting better, that sort of thing. Zach asked, what records do you both think showcase your skills the most as a producer and mixer? Which I think this is a good topic, if only to finally put together a Live with Matt Rad Spotify playlist. Because I think we should start putting things down that we talk about. Bradley in the chat there has been putting together show notes. We should have those going in the next week or so. But a Spotify playlist of things we've done, things we like, things we talk about on the show, I think we do. I mean, I know some of your stuff, and I could tell you some of my favorites of yours. But what in your head, what are the? I don't know if it's things you're most proud of, or whether it's mixes or things that mean something to you.
I think I have a couple of things that to me they sound like what I want records to sound like.
Which ones?
Start with the most obvious, which is the Khalid album, Free Spirit. That was a whole maximizing my R&B love, really going for it. Having access with Dennis to create a sonic world for the entire record. It was entrusted on us to finish sonically from all the producers. We knew all the producers, which was great. It's hard to come by that tight relationship with every producer because Dennis is Khalid's engineer. So he was compiling all the stems and sessions along the way when cutting the vocal. So we had a lot of control over that. And as an R&B album, I think that sounds like all the right things for me. So that's my favorite pop album that I've ever done. It makes sense to me that it's the most successful because all the pieces just fit. I really like a few of the mixes on the Lauv album. This Invisible Things mix I like this Believe mix. I like a few of those. I love Mariba's last album. That's a bit more on a crunchy, dark R&B tip. Kind of like alternative folk R&B. It's cool spatial effects. I like that a lot. I like Summer Walker's first album that I got to do. Again, a little bit more lo-fi and crunchy, but hits hard and is smooth. I really like the the new Kid Leroy mixes that came out. I think that Always Do mix and
those sound great.
Without You, those sound really like what I want, like the current melodic hip hop, R&B, whatever that genre really is, like melodic rap. Like that's kind of where I like a sweet spot for how I think that should hit, like aggressive enough but still hard hitting, but pop vocal, because he should sound like a star, because he is a star. I got a couple things that aren't out yet that I think will be that for me. So I don't know. I have a lot. I actually like. I'd have to look at my hard drives. Like I love so much of what I've worked on, and I feel lucky about that. And people, like I said, the last 2 years of getting a lot of W's, trying to bring things into my world paid off. So like I'm gonna feel that way naturally about these things. So that's cool, man. That's my short answer.
Yeah, and a few of those I haven't dug deep into. I've listened to a lot of that stuff, but I'm such.
You give me one. Give me one. What do you think?
Of your stuff?
Yeah, just one of mine, just to see how I feel about it. Maybe we can disagree on it or something.
I've listened to the mixes on the Khalid album. I think even before we started doing these, I remember sending you a text saying I was just listening off an iPhone with a friend of mine. And it was some random mix of modern pop stuff, and then one of the Khalid mixes came on, and I can't remember if it was Talk or Better, one of those, and it sounded more aggressive off of the phone because the transients were all there.
Yeah,
and I was like, your shit hits harder on an iPhone than all the other pop stuff on this playlist, and I don't know. It was just the most. Obviously, it's a gorgeous mix, and none of it sounds harsh, and everything's clear, and it's got all the good density and saturation. But the transients were harder than everybody else's mix, and I was just like, fuck, this dude's a genius. Like, that's. It was just I might have been a little.
That's
stoned.
a lot.
I might have been a little stoned at the time too. So
that's meeting my intention for sure. Because when you allow transients to pass through without compressing or limiting too heavily or at all, you can get that impact on small devices, and 80+% of people are listening on small devices. So that's a win. I also wanted to bump and have low end that extends and shakes the floor of your car or your house if you have a Sonos with a sub or whatever. And I always want that. So to get the two of those things is very difficult. And I think most engineers are going for the only small device thing and still not grasping the transient personality correctly for some reason. Because when I put them on my big speakers, there's no real sub either. So the upper harmonics are there to hear on the device, but the transients aren't there. And that's kind of what I'm like, I don't understand. I'm just not going to follow suit is all. I'm going to try to still diverge my own path.
This is the comment of the year thus far. Drinking game. Every time John says transient, take a shot. You're going to be fucked up.
Take a shot of espresso instead and get amped and make another record.
There you go. Well, it's funny. This is one of the reasons you and I we're friends, but we also have kind of complementary different, not approaches, but so many of my favorite records that I've worked on, I'm just emotionally attached to the story. So they're not even necessarily my favorite records sonically or production, although many of them are. But like, In the Name of Love, which we mentioned, was a song that I wrote with a really good friend of mine, Ruth Ann, and Ilse, who I just met that day, who became a good friend of mine. And we just wrote a song to write a song. And then it took a 6-8 month journey I knew what it needed production-wise, but I couldn't do the EDM thing myself, so we tried 4 or 5 different producers, and then I met Steve James just to meet him, not even to work on that song, and I was like, hey, I have this thing, and we played it, and he pulled out Ableton. It was the first time I'd seen somebody really chop on Ableton, and then he created a thing, and I was like, there's some momentum here, and he was working with Martin, and then the song got, like, the journey of it all was, and being involved in that whole process is what I really loved about it. Another song like that, this Keith Urban song Horses that I did, which Eric Valentine came in and helped finish the production and then mixed. Eric Valentine, who was my mentor for years and years. So to write a song with a couple of friends a few years before, the song got to Keith. I got to go to Nashville and work with Keith. We finished it, then brought it to Eric. And so like these long journeys are the things that I get really invested in. I mean, even the records that nobody really knows, although you might know them, but like the Dredge record I did back in like 2007 or 8, which, you know, they sold maybe 10,000 copies, but the people who love that band just fucking love that band. And I produced, engineered, mixed it. We mastered it off of half-inch tape. Like those kind of journeys and investment. Every drum sound on that like 20-song album was a completely different drum setup. Each setup was unique. Like we took forever to make the album. And that's just like the process of making them. Again, we talk about the journey of making records. You got to invest in the process of it more than trying to get results, although results are very important. But if you're going to get better or going to have a career, you got to love doing it for its own sake. You got to make art for its own sake. That's, you know, again, like even the first One Direction song that I did, which is Best Song Ever, which became a big hit, just the process of doing a new thing, and it was scary, and because it was a big label and it's Simon Cowell, but I was only in touch with this one guy, Tyler, and I didn't really know what I was supposed to do, so I just did what I thought would be good for it, and it turns out that was the thing. But it was just like, I don't really have any context, it feels kind of weird, so I'm just going to do exactly what I think it should be. And you know, that it's those are the memories I attach to, and there's lots of things like that, which songs that never came out that I have a similar attachment to, but you can't even find them anywhere because the artist, whatever, it didn't happen or whatever. But it's the emotional attachment to it that I seem to have, which also makes it hard. We talk about this a lot. You don't have as much of this challenge, although that's part of why you moved over to mixing, is so you don't have the frustration of getting emotionally invested in a thing that never comes out. You get to turn over songs and you get to have releases and that sort of thing. I'm stuck in a lot of things where like some of my favorite songs just never got the love, or it was going to be the first single and then the head of the label left, and then it's in purgatory forever, and maybe in 10 years I'll have somebody cover it because it's not a song anybody knows. But you know, those sort of journeys happen all the time.
I had too many of them, and that's why I doubled down. I was getting hired to mix. I was like, I'm just going to do that because release rate is 98%. And I do things to be heard by other people, not to sit on a hard drive, you know?
All right. Well, let's see. What else can we get into here? I don't know. Do you feel like talking some shit? Let's see.
Yeah.
Tall Music asked, after the BAE 1073 talk, and we talked CL1B and those sort of things last week, any other gear, plugins, music trends that you guys don't like seeing? I think the only thing in my mind is I guess it's a trend, and I don't want to name the song because we've talked about it in previous streams, and it's not a song that I've really listened to much because of it. But I get disappointed when my favorite record makers, producers, mixers, whatever, make things that are badly aggressive and bright and kills what I know to be their genius. Yeah. That's the only thing that really bugs me in modern music. I love hearing shit that's jarring. Actually, the other day, on a song I'm working with an arranger on a song, and he did a version with a saxophone solo in one of the parts. And I was like, this is so awful. And I had such a visceral reaction to it. But then I was like, I hate this, like with a passion. Maybe that's like usually indicative of something. Maybe there's something amazing here. Maybe there's going to be a sax. So, but I wouldn't have done that when I was younger. But the fact that something is jarring and I don't like it aggressively, I generally go, this might be instructive. There might be something cool here. But in terms of trends, it's just, I just don't like it when things are so bright and so compressed that it's not as good as...
It sucks the life out of it.
Yeah.
It could be 10% less and be better. And that's, and connect more. I want to go on a different side of that. And it's a trend that has been ongoing since marketing was involved in audio gear, is the fact that buy this and it will solve all your problems. This new plugin will fix that thing that you're doing. This
is why we're having these conversations. This is literally the reason.
I don't want to point out any individual. Everyone knows how I feel about certain plugin manufacturers. And if they haven't, they can go back and hear other rants that I'm not going to go on now. Yeah. But the "this will fix it" message really irks me. Yeah. And this is going to be slightly paradoxical because I talk about PMCs and monitoring this way. That's like, that should be, exactly, the mixed down industrial complex. You can quote Rory, but it's actually George Hazelrig, and we've adopted that and speak about that on Conversations, that terminology, George Hazelrig. And the paradox here is I'm talking about PMC as a company that has a philosophy behind the creation of their product that is unlike, and design is unlike anybody else. And they offer you a demo so you can hear it. Their marketing isn't, this will make you better. It's, yo, hit us up, we'll come through, right?
Yeah.
So it's very specific of, we're so confident in how you're going to relate to this and how it's going to affect your work that you should try it on us first. And we'll maximize the room and how it feels right off the bat. So that's why I speak so highly about that. But any other type of get this, it'll fix it, it really, it doesn't make any sense. It's driving at a different part of our brain that isn't creative and isn't sensical. And even just the book that I was reading before, 7.5 ways about the brain, or how the brain works, 7.5 ways the brain works. Lisa Feldman Barrett, great book so far. I've listened to her speak on many podcasts, but this book kind of debunking the lizard brain mentality, and like all these, she's quoting like National Geographic, talking about how CEOs can maximize selling to the lizard brain. It's like, that's not a real thing. It's just not. The lizard brain has been debunked decades ago, and it's still used in marketing resources for executives to sell you shit. And in the mixed sound industrial complex, that is happening over and over again. We have to use our ears. Like I wasn't resistant to the idea of taking out this overly expensive piece of gear that I tell a story about in my own head that does what I want. I pulled that shit out and was like, this is better because I got a different feel from it, right? I don't know if someone else would have felt the same way. Now, granted, there was 5 or 6 people involved in the AB when it happened, and it was almost unanimous. One person was like, well, I like this bit better from the original, and then this from that. But it was understood what the benefits were. And then now, because I was doing it on a mix that's already released, like it's different when you mix into this now, not put this on the end and say, this is the new mix. It's like, well, what decisions are going to be made into this? So you have to be allowed to work into these tools. So to follow the leader per se, and this person does this, so I'm going to do it, is not enough. It's enough to try something and figure it out for yourself.
Yes.
So that the marketing and the branding of new, like these BAE 1073s and this CL1B is like, post a picture of so-and-so recording a vocal through it. It's like, well, I've mixed that person that you're putting on your ad, and I have to do a lot of work as a mixer to counteract all the shit that's doing to it. So in a sense, take it from me, but don't take it from me. That's not the right chain for you.
I agree with basically everything you said. I would expand it slightly to say that these companies who, whether it's an all-in-one plugin, or this is the thing that sounds like the other more expensive thing, or this is the really expensive thing and therefore it's the high-end thing, it's totally fine for companies to have marketing. It's totally fine for companies to try to provide simple solutions for people that don't want to think too much, that just want to work quickly. But why we have these conversations is because presumably people tuning in want to think and want to go the extra step. And so to try to combat, we're doing these conversations for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons we talk about this kind of stuff is to combat the marketing that says, and not just the literal, here's an advertisement, it says you need this, but the way that people, if you're used to everybody uses this microphone or uses this preamp or this compressor, maybe it is the best thing because of that. But also maybe it's way overpriced and you don't need it and there's better ways to do it. And so we talk so much about trying to not have shortcuts and really spend the time, because anybody who's watching this who wants to make records, if you are willing to put in the if you're not willing to put in the time, then there's no reason you should be watching us talk, because all we do is put in the time. We put in so much time that we take time out of putting in the time to talk about putting in the time. That's how much fucking time we put into this shit. Just for fun, just for funsies. We don't make any money doing this. We're just talking about it. But if you want to put in the time, you will get a lot out of it. Understanding why that all-in-one plugin you use sounds the way it does and the components it uses, and then you reconstructing them yourself will give you a huge amount of skills in all these other areas. Or when you hear like, okay, it's this compressor and this preamp, go do some research. What is that preamp? When was it designed? What about it do people like? Then get a chance to hear it. How does it sound different than another? Like, you got to put in all that time if you want to be making the best things. And presumably that's what we're all here to do, right?
Yep. And on that note, just keeping in mind that we're doing this because we also have a pretty deep amount of connections and in the industry of people that make records that are homies. And when I talk to, say, a handful of producers, 6, 8, 10 producers, and they talk about the best mic, they're all using different microphones, and they all have charting records. Yep. So the best is kind of irrelevant because it's what you do with it to a degree, but none of them are 1073s into CL1Bs anymore.
Yeah, and everybody's
You said talk shit. You said we're talking shit.
Yeah. So and everybody's got their, when I had Matt Beckley on, the great vocal producer and good friend of mine, Matt Beckley, we did 2 episodes on vocal production. He and I have similar philosophies and very different setups. He gets amazing vocals and he has a certain sound. And what he said is, I like this because when I did the shootout, this is the one I liked the most. But it wasn't so-and-so used this and therefore I used it. It's I tried a bunch of stuff and I like this one the most. And I tried this other one. He tried the undertone stuff that I love. He was like, I couldn't get the same sound as I could out of my Chandler. I just like my Chandler more. I was like, awesome. Like, it's not like one's great and one sucks. It's that his worked for him and by the way, if you get an old 1073 and you love that and that's the sound, or you get a new one and that beats all the rest of them to you, great. I bet it won't.
Great.
I bet it won't, but maybe it will. Does, that's totally fine. It's taking the time to really listen. And by the way, once you get up into, I've been talking about monitors and the DMs with some people. Once you get up into a certain price range, it's really easy to borrow stuff, demo stuff, try stuff. All these, if you're going to spend a few $1,000s on anything in music, somebody's going to let you borrow it for a week. Maybe you got to sign something. Maybe you got to give them deposit. Maybe you got to get whatever. But like, you can borrow a lot of things and listen to them. But it takes time. It takes time. It takes some phone calls.
When you custom order a chair or a sofa, you get a swatch for the fabric.
Yeah. But this is even better. This is a sofa that you get to sit on for a week and then decide if it's comfy.
Exactly. It's even better.
So, take the time to do that. Borrow things from your friends. Ask your friends, can I borrow your thing for a week? Like, do that shit. Sorry, you're going to say.
I wanted to just jump back because when we're on the kitchen tour, you mentioned the Conversations podcast with Ryan. Yeah. And I really want to just talk about how excited I am that we had our first guest on the podcast after 20 episodes. And
that's awesome.
And how great it went and how, we're here and we're talking about all this stuff and dude gets on and it's just an extension of all the points of view, right? It's just hey, this is my experience in the writing room. Like I would say an hour and a half of it was Ryan's perspective on a transition from being an artist in a band to how to sculpt records for other people and put the ego aside and understand when to assert yourself and who's the leader in the room, who's controlling the energy and all this stuff. And it's exciting that there are people that want to discuss these things. And I was hoping to chat about it a second anyway. And then it happened during the thread, the tour. And I just wanted to come back to that because I think there's so much value that we were able to pull from him. And I hope we can continue to have guests on that are that thoughtful and that interested in going a layer 2 or 3 deeper, just like you want to do and I want to do. And we could talk all day about monitors and gear, and that's also necessary. And I want to do that. And I think that we're doing a perfect balance of that. I think over at Conversations, we're not doing any of it because the minute it happens, I or Rory go, ugh. And then we just like, but I think the audience here kind of needs a little bit of that as well. So I just want to say that like we are long format over there doing 2.5, 3 hours. So we should point at it a little bit. I think there's going to be a lot of crossover here. As Kid Cutler just said, yes, at some point. Yeah, for sure.
I'll definitely go hang out with the Conversations guys. I love it. I was actually talking to Spider and Rory about coming on doing a live with Matt Rad and just talking about home studio setup. Because I know there's a lot of questions every week about what do I do with my monitors and should I put foam in my seal, all these sorts of things. So I'm going to try to have Spider and Rory on.
I'm just excited to our for our little community of, creative audio makers, anybody else outside of that just finds the perspective interesting. It's really helpful to keep us going. And I want to find new ways to mix records and make records and talk about records to share for myself and others. I think that this helps us stay fresh and stay on our feet, and, I'm we talked about engineering and pivoting back to that. I'm also going to manage someone this year, and the podcast is a priority this year. And there's a lot of out of the comfort zone that I think more throughout this year we'll be talking about. And I think I'm doing it only for this reason, in a sense. Like, I don't know if I would do it if I was isolated and not sharing the experience. I don't necessarily think it's for me, really. Well,
it's part of the reason we started doing this, right? Yeah. There's been some discussion about Discord. I'm going to look into that in the next week. If you guys have, who is it just in the chat there? Chavis Barron, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, and Iggy was also talking about it. One of the guys in the chat a lot. I think we should start a Discord server. I've been looking into it a little bit, but please hit me up in DMs if you guys have ideas about how to start it, how to manage it, what we need from it. But in terms of
Diego, I didn't say that, but we can try.
Oh, beer and tennis. Yeah, this is one of the reasons. I remember when you and I started having these conversations, it really was like, I don't know what we're going to do. It's going to be uncomfortable, but let's just do it because it's out of the comfort zone. So fuck it, let's try it. And it's been an amazing experience. So more encouragement for people to just do stuff that feels kind of weird, but might seem exciting. You never know what's going to happen. As long as we don't say something stupid and get canceled, I think we're probably all good.
Oh my God, I love Josh Murdy talking about braising vocals. He DM'd me that yesterday. What was that? I was re-listening to the Phoebe Bridgers Punisher album 2 nights ago. I think it was Sunday night. I was going on a walk in my hood before going to bed, and I actually thought that was a good equation. Like, a lot of her vocals are super braised in a fine white wine. I don't know about red wine. It's just like the reverb comes and goes. Like, that's the Ethan Gruska magic. Shout out to the homie Ethan. Like, the way that the vocals like feeling really dry, and it gets louder and bigger, and the verb comes up around on certain notes to evoke a new emotion. Like, that's braising. That's slowly deciding your vocal production. That's not just fucking searing it and saying it's loud pop. And that record is getting so much love. She's an amazing artist, getting so much love, and that vocal is braised, slow and low.
The way you talked about it reminded me of console mixing. And I was with another producer, and he was an older guy who was talking about pre-auto-tune records, where when they have pre-auto-tune, but in the era of hardware like H3000s, how they would hand tune vocals in particular notes, where vocal come up and they just to actually make it happen. I think about
Lauper records.
Lots of tons of records.
But specifically, like, you can hear it come up, and like the delays catch on to words that help the intonation feel a little more forgiving, right?
Yeah. So my question for you was, do you do much, or how do you think about, and the Phoebe Bridgers stuff made me think about that, this idea of physically writing things, performing things in a mix. Does that happen much anymore?
I used to. I don't anymore, but I definitely do that with effects.
You'll certainly you'll draw things in and make things.
Since I was 16, and like learned what a psychedelic was. That got me into like, oh, that word is referring to outer space, so let me take you out of space for a minute. Like, let's add a throw here, just like let the lyric tell you, where to take an effect. That's how I feel about that. I clip gain vocals and do some writing, but it's mostly clip gaining into saturation, because I think if you clip gain instead of writing after, you're going to get more aggression into a saturator. Like, I've found ways to do that.
You know what I did recently? I was clip gaining a vocal stem that I received. I was finishing a production, and I actually clip gained some of the words down, some of the words themselves, which I hadn't really done much before.
You get more feel, more dynamic,
to make it actually. So it's like a instead of like bah, 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 right in your face. I just, clip gaining doesn't have to be evening things out. Also, it can be actually making things more dynamic.
Yo, Diego, I want to do a masterclass too. Reach out to masterclass, and I'll do one.
Do an actual masterclass.
Yeah.
Making records.
Yeah, I want to do that. I don't know how to do the Twitch thing with the screen share yet, and I don't know if I want to do that, but I might do that. I don't know. Maybe I'll.
My thought on that, at least from my end, because there's been some questions about that from my end as well, that as soon as there's still one or two things in the pipeline potentially that that we might work on together in the near future. And I think if that ends up coming up, we should talk to the artist and say, hey, can we live stream this mix? And I can talk about the production. We can do the mix, that sort of thing. I thought that'd be cool.
Yeah. I think we should do that.
I don't know. There's all these comments in here.
The talk rhythm John was talking about, clip gaining. Yeah. In talk, like the hi-hat and the way the synth bounces around is clip gain because it's a loop. So I was able to do it to the main loop and get the swing, like, because the rough mix had a SSL comp on the mix bus that was just making it and I was like, that's cool if you're EDM, but I want to get that R&B lean. So I clip gain things down and certain things up, and that was very intentional, and I do that on everything. So that to me is more interesting than the riding the fader. I like to get the vocal dense and in place, like at 0. And I've talked about this earlier. I don't like to put my faders above 0 ever. So that people would probably push back on that, and like their automation is their game. I think there's different ways to automate when it's saturation, EQ, boosts in choruses instead of raising the vocal in the chorus. I just like to think a little bit different than that approach.
We got about, we got a couple minutes left. I think we kind of covered a lot of the main stuff.
Any other examples of raising vocals?
Raising vocals.
I just think everyone should listen to the vocal effects on the Phoebe Bridgers record. Listen to it for the emotional content as well and how great of a performance it is, but listen to it as an engineer as well. There's something really special about the focal point of the forward to backward motion of the vocal that is really, like, I've been talking about it on every episode with you, and they're executing it perfectly. And so that's something to study. That's homework.
And who mixed it?
Honestly, I looked up the name last night. I think it's Tony Berg's engineer. Tony Berg co-produced it with Ian Gruska. And I forgot. I feel bad that I don't know his name, but it's the engineer that works out of their studio and does everything, I'm pretty sure, with them. And
shout out Tony Berg, who gave me advice. I haven't talked to in a few years, but gave me advice on a couple of my guitar purchases. Tony Berg is a Los Angeles legend. He's a real one. Shout out Tony Berg.
So that record is homework for everybody to go listen to. It's stunning.
All right. Well, I think that's about. Oh man, what's the name of the song? People are asking. A particular song?
Halloween was great. Chinese Satellite also has a lot of these things. I just listened to the album down. It's not that long, but yeah, Halloween and Chinese Satellite come to mind for that.
So I think we call it here. So next week, let's do loudness, perceived loudness, density. Let's have a long conversation about all those things. I will do some research, and I should probably talk to you first because there's a lot of questions I have. I'm less knowledgeable about that concept and how people think about it. I actually don't really know how to frame it. So it's going to be an interesting thing. I think we'll all learn together on it.
We can. Oh, thanks, Alexander.
Oh, Mike Mogus mixed it. Mike Mogus of Saddle Creek fame, the Omaha sound.
Oh, word.
I think it wasn't Mike Mogus. He did like the Bright Eyes records and all the Saddle Creek stuff. Really cool sounding records.
I stand corrected.
Well,
that's great.
John,
sounds great.
John, love you. Thank you guys so much. The chat is like blown up this week. We got so many more questions. It's really a cool little community we're building. We got more things coming. Check out the Conversations podcast with Ryan Lewis. A great interview. Thank you guys for participating as always. I'm going to hit y'all in the DMs. Let us know about Discord server too. And if y'all want to share this, we always love it, and get the word out to anybody else you think might like it. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah. Cheers.
Much love.
Guys. Much love. Peace.